Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Yeah, y'all read the title, so let's just get into it. I'm not even gonna waste any time. Let's just get into it. Also, these flyaways are present throughout the entire video. This is a new wig, you know, she got some bundles. Do you see that? Do you see the bundles? She got bundles. Anyway, but it's a new wig, so, you know, still trying to like train the hair to lie in a certain way. Also, this is a side note, a 6x6 closure? Do yourself the favor, okay? But anyway, yeah, let's get into it for real. Let's get into it, okay? So last summer I was working at a bank, because you know, gotta make some money during the summertime. And I got a job at a bank in like my hometown. It's not my hometown. It's the town that my mom grew up in. Both of her parents live there. Yeah, it's like a small town. So it just has like a really homey vibe. So yeah, not my hometown, but the town that I live in now in Southern Illinois. And like I said, my grandma like lives in the town, has lived in the town for a long time. She worked at the bank that I decided to work at for like 47 years. So she's practically an institution, you know? Anyway, last summer I get a job working at the bank that my grandma used to work at because, you know, nepotism is really annoying, but sometimes you gotta indulge when you have the opportunity, you know? I'm working at this bank, and the bank that I worked at had multiple locations within the same town, and they had like several interns working at the different locations. So I knew that there were other summer interns that were like around my age, and like I met them, but we didn't like work together or anything like that. Anyway, for whatever reason, our locations got switched. So I was working at a location and another intern was working at one of the other locations, and they decided to switch us just because, I don't know. They just decided to switch us. So I go to the other location, and like, I like the vibe, you know? I like the vibe of the old location, but the new location was good too. I was working with different people, obviously, so that was cool. It was just nice to meet more of like the employees that worked at the bank, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I got moved to this other location, and, you know, I was settling in, you know, finding my rhythm and everything like that. So yeah, they lived in a small town. It was pretty quiet, very unsuspecting, not a lot of like action as far as like federal crimes are concerned, right? On July 10th of last year, that changed drastically. In order for this to make sense, I'm gonna describe like the layout of the bank that I worked at. There were like 4 stations, we call them drawers, that people worked at, where you would like keep your money and everything like that. And like it also had a computer so that you could use the systems that you needed to, etc, etc. We had like 4 workstations. They were all like corridored off by like security, obviously, like a security door. So it was basically like a room that was corridored off by, like I said, the security door. So 2 of the 4 workstations faced the lobby of the bank and like helps the customers that were actually like in the bank. I mean, we all helped customers that were in the bank, but they had like interface with people that were in the bank. And then there was kind of like a little corridor, and then 2 more workstations that faced the like the drive-in side. So we assisted mostly people that weren't actually physically coming into the bank, but obviously using the drive-through. And I was at one of the stations that was at the drive-through. But what would happen sometimes if it got busy and there wasn't anybody in the drive-through, we would move back and forth like through the corridor to help customers if it got busy at the front but wasn't busy in the back. You know, you get it. Basically, you move to where you're needed. At this time, it wasn't busy in the bank, and there were 3 of us working that day. So there were 2 in the back and 1 in the front. The lady at the front, like I said, it wasn't busy, so she was on the phone. It wasn't like a personal call or anything like that. Like, she was on the phone talking to somebody. And from the back, I was sitting because I wasn't doing anything, and I saw a man come to the front needing assistance. And so I obviously saw that like my manager was on the phone with somebody. So I walked over and I asked him what he needed. And I remember he said, "I'm looking for a loan. Do you have like a loan officer here?" And by that time, my manager had like hung up the phone because she was done with her conversation, and like there was obviously a customer there and a question that I couldn't answer. You know, I couldn't help him with like a loan because I was just a teller. Like I was just cashing people's checks, depositing stuff, etc, etc. So I go back to my station because I'm like, okay, like she's got that. I kind of like deferred him over to her and what she was saying, and she was already like engaged and like talking to him at that point. And so basically like I make sure that he's taken care of, or like that he's being taken care of, and I go to walk back to my section, and I'm still kind of just like listening to what she's saying. The last thing I remember hearing her say was, we actually don't have a loan officer at this location right now. Like, if you want to talk to somebody about a loan, you can go to XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Giving him information about a loan and how to acquire one at our bank, you know? So I just go back to my station. It's a really slow day, really quiet morning. And so I just start like, I don't know, I was probably like going through Twitter or something like that. And the lady next to me was doing the same thing. Like, she was working on something. So yeah, her time was occupied. My time was occupied by Twitter, you know, important shit. So we weren't like super aware of everything that was going on at the front of the bank because we thought everything was Gucci. Turns out everything was not Gucci. I'm gonna give them fake names. I just don't want to infringe on anybody's anonymity. One of those might be right. But anyway, I don't want to like, you know, be that person out here like telling their government names. So we'll call the lady that was in the back with me Carrie, and the lady at the front, we'll call her Margaret, okay? Yeah, 3 to 4 minutes later, me and Carrie hear Margaret go, "Carrie, go lock the doors." And we're just like, what? She seemed very like panicked, and like it just wasn't like her normal demeanor. And we were just like, what are you talking about? And she said, "Go lock the doors, I just got robbed." And we're like, what? We literally thought she was kidding at first because we were just sitting there like, who came into the bank? Who robbed you? Whatever. And so once we figure out that like this is a serious situation, Carrie runs to the front and starts like locking all the doors, obviously. Yeah, we just start trying to assess the situation. And you might be asking why I started this story off with the robbery that took place, but it's just, this story is so multifaceted that like, honestly, in the course of everything, that was like the smallest incident, like the bank got robbed. Okay, so while we're like calling the police, calling the president of the bank, everything like that, like we just got robbed, blah, 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 going through all of like the protocols and everything like that, I'm gonna kind of like describe what was happening outside of the bank, like once we were robbed, once this guy left the bank. So our robber left the bank, and the location of this bank was right next to a car wash. At this car wash, there's a police officer sitting getting his patrol car washed, and he notices something really suspicious. There's this guy leaving the bank with a plastic bag full of money. He could tell from like the distance that the guy was away from him. He could see through the bag, and he could tell that there were like bills in there, and he thought, that's kind of weird. And so the police officer is just sitting there and kind of like observing this guy, because that's sus behavior, you know, coming from a bank and everything like that. And then he gets like the call on his radio that our bank has just been robbed. And he's literally watching like said bank robber leave the location. So what happened is like how they like apprehended him. The guy was like walking around the car wash because he could see the patrol car sitting there, like probably obviously observing him. And so he decided that he was not gonna walk on like the street, but he was gonna walk through like one of the bays of the car wash that was empty. So he sees the police officer. Like I said, he walked through the bay of the car wash, and then he started to like stop at a dumpster. He stopped at the dumpster of the car wash, and he started to like take off his button-down shirt. He was wearing a button-down shirt, and he started to take it off. And he was also changing caps. So he had like a cap in his back pocket that he was putting on and then taking off his collared shirt. He was trying to change like his appearance so he wasn't wearing the clothes that he robbed the bank in outside of the bank. And you're doing all of this in front of a police officer? Like, he knew the guy was watching him. The police officer had obviously exited the car wash at that point, and he was parked in the direction of the dumpster. So he starts to approach this guy and ask him like, what are you doing? And this man starts to like reach for his waistband, and you can see like the cap of a gun. And then the officer tells him like, if you keep moving, like I'm gonna shoot you, you know? It's amazing the forewarning that police will give a Caucasian man. All right, and that's my political statement for the morning. Anyway, tells him he's about to shoot him. By then, like, he has enough evidence on him, yada, yada, yada. He apprehends him, tells him like, dude, my guy, we know. what you just did. You know what I mean? Like literally 50 feet away. Maybe not. My spatial reasoning skills are really, really bad. But the car wash is very, very close to the bank that I worked at. Like it could not have been timed more perfectly. Like this man literally robbed a bank and walked into police custody. It was kind of funny. Back to like the bank where we're freaking out. We're trying to, you know, figure out what's going on, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so now I'm gonna cut to like what was going on while he was being apprehended, like in the bank, because we were just trying to like figure everything out because we just got robbed, you know? So we like obviously asked Carrie if she's okay because she's like the one that had the most like contact with him. Like he actually like robbed her drawer. And so like we're trying to like figure out what happened. And so she's kind of like giving her rundown. Apparently, after he asked for the loan and she said like, I'm sorry, like I said, the last thing that I heard her say, like, I'm sorry, like our loan officer is actually not here, like she's at another location today, or they're at this location, blah, 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 trying to give him information. That's the last thing I heard. So from her perspective, right after she said that, he lifted up like the bottom of his shirt. He didn't actually like pull out his gun, but I mean, it's enough to show somebody the cap of one. He like lifted up his shirt and showed her the cap, and he said, the loan that I need is all the money in your drawer, just give me everything. And so that's when she just started like giving him everything, blah, 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 blah. He pulled out his own plastic bag and started putting the bills in there, which is another reason why he was caught so easily, is because the police officer could see right through the plastic bag. But anyway, yeah, like that's how the robbery went down, and he was very, very like chill. That's the thing that I think scared me the most, is not even the fact that like we were robbed or that happened. It was just how unsuspecting he was. He wasn't like menacing. He didn't seem rough. He didn't seem like he was in a hurry. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't angry. From the like the limited interaction that I had with him, so unsuspecting. That's why I went back to my cage and like didn't think anything of the situation, because I just thought like, oh, like this is just a normal bank transaction or like a customer needing help, you know? Like I said, like that's the most scary part, is like how unsuspecting people could be. Like they could have the worst intentions for you, could be like the most malicious, menacing people, but can hide that between like charm and a smile. It's really scary. But anyway, this story actually continues. So we're trying to like figure out who this man is, because nobody recognized him. Like I said, this bank is in a really small town, so like especially if you worked at the bank, literally everybody knows everybody. It's very rare for customers to come into the bank needing any type of service. It's not even like, oh, they have an account at this bank, or they have like a loan from this bank. Like no, like they could be like somebody's cousin or somebody's, you know what I mean? Like it's just a small town, very connected like that. Yeah, so nobody knew who he was. We were just trying to figure out what happened, where he could have been from, everything like that. Then all of us came to like this light bulb conclusion that we were suspected it was something related to a peculiar event that happened the day before. So this is not like the day of the robbery, but rather the day before. We got to work and we noticed that there was a car in the parking lot facing like the main road. And it wasn't a car that belonged to anybody. That's not where anybody at the bank parked. It wasn't the cleaning lady's car or anything like that. And it was also just not in a location that those people would have parked. And the bank was closed at this time, so it wasn't a customer. The van was empty. There wasn't anybody in it. And we were just like, that's kind of weird. We start looking at the van. We notice that it has Texas tags, which is peculiar for a small town in Southern Illinois. And then we also noticed that it was packed full of stuff, and it didn't look like somebody that was moving. It looked like somebody that was like living out of their car. There was like a Walmart pie on the dashboard. I'll never forget that. It looked like somebody not just living in their car, but like lived in their car and like trashed it. You know what I mean? Anyway, we just thought it was so weird. And we were like trying to figure out where this car was from. And there were like conspiracies about like who the van belonged to, everything like that. Then at around 9 o'clock, somebody came from, we don't even know what direction. This bank is like on the busiest road in town. So it's not like there are residential areas nearby. There's literally like what they call junk food junction. There's like all of their junk food places. There's like a Walgreens, there are gas stations, everything like that. It's not like a residential area. So we saw this man walk from somewhere. We have no idea where he came from. By the time we noticed he was getting into that suspicious car, like we hadn't seen him walking from a direction. So we weren't like watching him walk to the car, you know what I mean? We just noticed right when he got to the car. But yeah, he got into the car, started it, and drove away. And we were just like, that's kind of weird. That man was the man that robbed the bank the next day. So through all of like the police investigations and everything like that, we find out that he was a 70-year-old Vietnam vet that was obviously from Texas, and he was going up north to like visit a sister or something like that, a relative of some kind that was living in Wisconsin. He wasn't traveling with the intention of going like back home. He was like moving himself. Like I said, his car looked like he was like living out of it, if not living out of it, at least moving very like messily and disheveled, you know? Apparently like his car broke down, he was low on money, didn't know what to do, so he went to like another like a cash store or something like that, somewhere where you can get quick loans, and was denied there. He came to our bank asking for a loan, and I guess just the loan officer alone not being there was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna rob this place. So yeah, homeboy just robbed a bank. Through like all of the information that the police were giving us, we found out that the gun he used was actually a pellet gun. It wasn't real, which is why he didn't pull it out of the waistband of his pants. But still, it was scary to know that like it could have been a real gun, that somebody could intend to like harm you like that. It was still really, really scary. But then also it's just kind of crazy that this man really was like reaching for a pellet gun, to pull out a pellet gun like against a police officer. What? Yeah, so he was basically just like a senior citizen that was down on his luck and didn't know what else to do except rob a bank, I guess. And obviously not that any of that is justified, you know, like he really like terrorized like Margaret. From the police information, we learned that like not only was he 70 years old, but he also had like compromised health, and so it completely changed my perspective on the robbery. Like I mentioned on this channel, I'm from South Africa, and when my family lived in South Africa, we were robbed 11 times in 8 years. And there was one time that we were coming home and the robber was still in our house and realized that we were coming home, or like walking into the home. And I remember my sister Grace was walking down the hallway and he was coming out of the house. So she was going in, he was coming out, and he kind of like shoved her to the side as he was like leaving our house. So when I think about robberies, like that's my point of reference. Not to mitigate the trauma of what Margaret went through, but at the same time, it's completely different when you have a police force that is actively trying to address crime because it's not as rampant. And also when you know that somebody's intent isn't to like harm you, you know what I mean? Like when we were robbed, we never had the comfort of knowing like, did this person really intend to harm us, or did they just need something to sell so that they could, you know, buy food for themselves or their family? You know what I mean? Like it's just, it kind of changes your perspective. So that's why it's kind of like a random funny story to me, as opposed to something that was like more deeply traumatizing, because it ended really well. He literally had the money for not even 4 minutes, and like we knew that he didn't intend to harm anybody. He literally just didn't know how to come out of the situation that he was in. And in addition to that, that situation just really highlighted to me how fucked up this country is. I said I was only gonna make one political statement, but why not? Why not go for another? Just the fact that he was a Vietnam vet, I wonder how much of where he ended up in life was attributed to the effects of being a part of the Vietnam War. And you know, that heightened by the fact that he was most likely drafted, so it wasn't like a voluntary choice to go fight in that horrific and horrendous war. And it's just crazy to me that we live in a country that literally will use its citizens as like pawns of war, and then once they come back, it's just kind of like, okay, now you can just figure out how to be a human again, you know? As the story broke out, so many people were judging him, like, there are churches that you could go to, there's this that you could go to look for help, blah, 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 blah. But like, I just don't understand how that would be like the expectation, you know? I'm not saying that he had the right to come and like steal what he needed or emotionally scar and traumatize people in the process of doing what he did. But at the same time, how is somebody supposed to know that those resources are available to them? You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be reliant on on churches and just other benevolent entities of society to support your veterans. Regardless of how you feel about war, or specifically the Vietnam War, just the fact that people are used as pawns of war and then brought back to a country and just not even like given a fuck about, that you would be okay creating a situation wherein somebody becomes that desperate after you've just used them as a pawn of war to like increase your influence in the world is just, it's just kind of crazy. I think we're seeing it again with the way that the US is handling this virus, and the fact that capitalistic values are so entrenched in our society. People really care more about their economies and the stimulation of said economies than they do about human lives, because it's not even just about getting sick. It's not about just spreading the illness. Like it's literally about human lives. Like you care more about making a dollar than about the people that facilitate the ability for you to make a dollar. It just is absolutely crazy. All right, and that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!